So welcome everyone. This is a Zoom meeting for the Atlantic Common Law Assembly, and today is Wednesday, November 18th. We're here with Kevin Annett, and we're learning about Kanata and the action that's required right now. If you are just coming in, we'd ask you to keep your mic muted and your video off. If you do have any questions, we'd love to hear from you in the chat box. If you could capitalize your question just so it stands out, we would love it. I'm Dena and innovator in health and wellness. I got interested in common law when I started to report vaccine injuries that I was seeing in my practice, and was penalized, with a fine and hearings by my professional association in the health department. And then, CBC and some of the other big media people kind of, exploited that story. So right there, I could see kind of the corruption in our current government, and it gave me enough pain to sort of seek out another solution. And that's when I found Kevin Annett. So welcome. Tonight, we're going to talk about a little bit about the government tyranny that's brought us to this place, the systematic removing of our rights and freedoms, and the false narratives that the media are creating. What can we do to counter that and take action? So thank you for being here. We love your questions because it helps formulate sort of where we're going with the Zoom. So Kevin, do you have any opening comments?
Just good to see everybody here. And do you want me to jump right in? Or
jump right in.
All right, I'll jump into the deep end like I always do. That was the way I was taught to swim, by the way, in Winnipeg. When I was 6, I was literally thrown in the deep end by the swimming instructor. So I don't know what relevance that has, but maybe it's a symbol of what we're going into, because the idea of a republic is a very old one in Canada. It's just been wiped out of our memory. There was an attempt in 1837, rebellions in Lower and Upper Canada in Ontario and Quebec, that actually didn't really have a hope in hell because they were launched prematurely. These were aborted uprisings in York, which was Toronto at the time, and then in Quebec. And they tried to take on the British Crown in a very unprepared kind of way, without a vision beyond the fact that they didn't want the British Crown anymore. And after that, not only politically, but in our minds, there was this thing frozen in place in Canada, set up by the Act of Union in 1840. And it basically said, the Crown and the Church have absolute authority over society. And not only did that account for the subsequent genocide that we've documented very well, but it froze in place in the, at least the English Canadian mentality, the idea that there's something subversive or wrong about people governing themselves. There was this hysteria that the British Crown created about the American incursion with these ideas that the people can overthrow the government whenever they want, right? That they can be sovereign, separate from the authorities. And so when we start talking about this idea, we see the legacy of that indoctrination over many generations. People immediately say, can we do this? Like, is this a lawful thing to do? And even if people know it's lawful, they still have doubts whether it's something we should be doing right now. Isn't it safer to have simply an assembly on a broader basis? Some of the people who have attempted on Vancouver Island, at least, to disrupt what we're doing have made that argument. Don't get involved in the Republic. It's treason, which is a false statement, because treason is an action, that's not an idea. But the idea that we'll have a broader basis of support if we simply have a big assembly where everyone can talk. And that's a very attractive idea. It wasn't simply because of a few people coming in to disrupt. That idea caught on with a lot of people who were very cautious and hadn't gotten to that point in their own mind that a republic is the natural outgrowth of what we're doing. It's the inevitable outgrowth. You can't have a local assembly where you're talking about people governing themselves and not one day saying, well, we need that for the whole country. Because if you don't do that, you're going to be chopped up into little pieces and eventually overwhelmed by this system. We need a sense of national identity with this. Here's some advantages right now in terms of what we're doing, and I'd like your feedback and thoughts about all this. The Republic has always been implicit in the idea of what we're doing in the Assembly, but now especially with this new wave coming down, we need to be taking very seriously the reality of self-defense. And you don't do that simply by being in an assembly, because When you participate in a common law assembly, it doesn't indicate that you're under a new jurisdiction. You're still a quote Canadian gathering together in an assembly. So the assembly itself doesn't provide that protection or the jurisdiction. You haven't stepped out of the old system necessarily. But when you take out the oath to the Republic, you're saying, I'm severing ties, not just political, but here in my heart and mind and everything, any allegiance to the old system. And I'm now under a new national jurisdiction, part of a new nation. That provides a lot of psychological defense. It provides a sense of new identity. It also makes you realize that you can then be a delegate. You can establish the Republic once you take out citizenship. It's not something being imposed on us. We are creating it ourselves. And what you've read already, the statement in the case for Kanata, the Constitution we've been circulating, that people have been debating and looking at things, all of that is in formulation. You can affect that. You can formulate what the new nation looks like once you're a citizen. So it gives you a direct way in. You know, instead of saying, I don't like this in the Constitution, okay, then put in an amendment, change it. That's your power once you take out that citizenship. It's especially important that our leadership in the local assemblies are united in that way, because it gives us a common vision and purpose. You're much stronger together when you have that identity, that you're citizens of a new republic. And don't forget, here's an example of how things can change because of the involvement of people. The original vision, I remember 5 years ago in Winnipeg when we all came together, at that first gathering, there was a big contingent from Winnipeg who were traditionally kind of NDP folks. They were, you know, kind of on the left. And one of the things they inserted, one of the planks in the original platform, is they wanted a guaranteed annual income for everybody, right? Their response was, okay, we need to divide up the wealth of Kanata, and the only way to ensure that is to have the state give everybody regular income. Okay, that's kind of an old bromide of the left, that the state can do that. Now, then other people began to say, but wait a minute, this is tying people into the state again, and we don't want that. We want self-reliance, local self-government. We agree we need economic democracy, but there's other ways of doing that simply than handing everybody a check and making everyone dependent on the state. So we've removed that. The whole demand for a guaranteed annual income is now gone. Instead, we're asking people, and I've talked to a number of you about this already, how can we bring about that economic democracy and social equality locally in our own communities without looking to the state? And that's the advantage. The whole notion of the Republic is that if you look at the program, the way it's in the Constitution, the way it's laid out, power does not reside in the central government. Any decision of the Congress in the Republic can be not only countered by decisions within the court system, in that traditional balance between the court, the executive, and the legislative branches, but local assemblies and district assemblies can knock down legislation by the federal government, you know, by the Congress, by the national government. So we have the power to devolve that authority to our local assemblies. And anyone elected to Congress, to the government, or to the courts, they can be removed anytime by a recall of the majority of people who elected them. So we're building in the system whereby it isn't a central government like before, and yet it has that vision that we are, in fact, a nation. Another point on that, we're not going to be taken seriously by anybody unless we are a nation, and that includes Indigenous people. I had a meeting 2 nights ago up the coast from Vancouver, and there were several, for the first time, there were several traditional Native people there. And these are traditionalists. These are not people who signed treaties. They're outside that system. They've still retained their sense of identity, amazingly enough, since 90% of their people were exterminated, but they still are holding on to their notion of they are a sovereign nation. First thing they said is, well, the reason they came to the meetings, they said, we already know in your program, you've acknowledged the genocide. You want to get back to the pre-colonial system that our ancestors had together with each other. But that's only going to happen if you establish that nation-to-nation equality within a federation of equal nations. So that's not going to come about if we're just all hanging out in assemblies. We need that notion to take seriously the genocide that all of us, whether we were aware of it or not, contributed to. You know, when I was an 8-year-old in Sunday school in the United Church in Winnipeg, I was putting $1 every day, every Sunday into the collection plate, and that went to pay for the Indian hospitals, the sterilizations, the murders, trafficking of children, right? So, I mean, I contributed. We all did. We were all part of this machine. We need to consciously break out of it by saying we're a new nation. Morally, we can't do anything else. We can't kind of cling to the vestiges of the old system or pretend that we're somehow, different and better now. Okay, so those are some of the important things of why we need to identify with a nationhood. Also, it provides that political alternative. If you've been reading In the Art of War, Sun Tzu's whole point about you never respond to an enemy or they've won already, because you're going into not only their arena, but their chi, their energy, their way of looking at the world. We establish our own counterculture and bring everybody into that. Like what we said to the police, take an oath of allegiance to the Republic, to the Constitution. We don't have anything to offer them if we're not a nation, right? And also, we're establishing our own chi. Like, I didn't live through much of the 60s. I was fairly young then, but the whole thing that went on in the 60s all over the world was people were saying, we're not part of the old system anymore. We got a different ethos. We got a whole different way we look at the world. That's what we've got to do. But that expresses itself in nationhood in the best sense of the word, right? So that's another thing. And I mentioned it's the ultimate goal anyway, where the point is we're all seeking for that republic that isn't just somebody in Dawson Creek's doing one thing, somebody's over in Moncton's doing something else. For our own mutual defense, we need to start uniting and thinking like we're part of a new nation. So I think that's some of the main things. It's interesting too, the litmus test for how much of a threat you are to the system is how much you tend to get attacked and smeared. And the common theme everywhere we're getting attacked since March is that we can't have you join a republic. Don't talk about a republic, right? That keeps coming out. And that's coming from people who aren't necessarily aware of the fact that they are being fed this stuff. It's a script that started 15 or 20 years ago, came to the RCMP and E Division of Vancouver. As soon as we started talking genocide, this organized smear campaign began. And they're using that, they're attacking the notion of a republic every time it comes up. That's the system's way of saying we don't want that. We know that that's a threat to us. You can have local assemblies talking about common law, you can hand out leaflets, you can have protests. None of that constitutes a threat to the system. What we're doing we're saying, we've got a whole new ball of wax over here, people, and we're telling you to leave it and come over. What that does is, it's, the old saying, you don't fight an enemy because that way you make it stronger because it tends to absorb your energy. What you do is you withdraw from it and it collapses like a balloon, because the only way, what we're in is parasitic on all of us. It feeds off our energy, our time, our taxes, our attention. Everyone's running around saying, look at the latest measure they passed on us. All that's doing is they're feeding off us that way. What we do is cut off the ties. Boom. No more umbilical cord. Boom. We stand in ourselves all the time. We take back that power. We're the new nation, right? So those are the main points I'm going to make. There's a lot we can get into, including if you've looked through the Constitution, have ideas about it. What would the Republic look like in practice? What do we do now in terms of building that in a practical sense? One final point, you might have noticed there's in the bulletin that some of you have seen, any citizen has it now if because it came out of the National Council a few days ago. But the point it makes in there, it talks about reclamation. So what that means is we're actively reclaiming the nation. Let's say we want to form a common law court. We walk into the local courthouse and claim it, public building, in the name of the Republic. We reclaim that space. And that's one of the jobs of sheriffs, to organize and train people in the assembly and in our local cell groups and that to start doing that. Reclaiming Crown land. We can reclaim all of it under Section 621 of Magna Carta as reparations from a criminal Crown agency, right? So think in terms of what are the kind of ways we can reclaim and let everyone know we're taking back the country literally, not just symbolically or in our minds, but we are literally reclaiming the whole ball of wax. And that's got to be another practical outcome of what we're talking about. So I'll leave it at that. And I have 31 comments, so I don't know if I can follow all these, but.
Okay, well, let's go back. If anyone has any, we'll see. I think some is just conversation and comments about Trudeau. So maybe if you have, here's a comment maybe from Andrew. The current Canadian government is illegitimate, illegal, unlawful. It's literally law by decree now.
Yeah.
we use a governor general, sworn agents who swore their allegiance to the commoner with no powers at all. She is stripped of all authority in her own homeland and been removed from the UK. So Queen Elizabeth II is a Rothschild royal defunct. So that is our sheriff, Andrew, locally. Thank you for that, Andrew. If you have any other questions, you can put them in there.
Well, just on that, Andrew's point, Canada always does rule by decree. That's the setup. Over the last number of decades, on average, about 3/4 of all the law passed are passed order in council. They never even appear before Parliament. Order in council means it's from the Privy Council. The Privy Council office is chaired by the Governor General, and insiders, bureaucrats, senior civil servants who are answerable to one guy, Governor General, in right of the Queen, right? And all they've done with these COVID measures, they've just acted that way again. This is ruled by decree, but it's, again, nothing unusual. It's the norm in Canada. So anyway, just that point.
Wendell says, I know in the US, there's lots of sheriffs that are disobeying those crackpot governor orders. So we hope we have some true patriots here in the military and police that will disobey these corrupt Kabbalists. Do you have any question on that or comment, Kevin?
Nope. No.
There was a lot of sex trafficking in Australia and Canada, and Justin doesn't want this to get out, says Sammy. President Trump has made a huge dent in child sex trafficking, says Wendell. So is there, London Bridge has fallen. Did you see what happened in Denmark after 1 week of pots and pans? They threw COVID in the bin. Okay, so if you have any links that you want to share with that, Brent, feel free to pop it in the chat box. Can you talk on the Trump situation and if his re-election can make a difference? I've heard there's a lot going on in the background, says Peter.
Well, it's kind of funny. I have just a short comment on that because we all have our own take on all that. But I know that to talk about in the US or any election system, to talk about one side being all good and the other side being all bad, this kind of by this one-dimensional notion of reality where your side is all right and the other side is all wrong. You see, America has been completely bifurcated between this bipolar reality, and it's very old in our culture. We don't have a yin-yang Eastern notion of the interconnection of good and evil, how one depends on the other. I mean, so the reality is elections are always fixed. The reality is this time maybe the Democrats fixed it more effectively than the Republicans did last time. So that's not the issue. We've got to get out of the whole notion that some savior figure is going to lead us into the promised land. We need to turn off the internet and that whole bullshit that they're imposing on us. They're seeing what they allow us to see. We got to create our own reality. And the real question is not what Trump is doing or Biden's doing. The real question is, what are we doing in our communities? What is our republic? How are we beginning to reclaim our own minds and lives and defending our children and all of that? We have so much energy in the day, folks, and we got to really focus on that. Otherwise, we spend the whole day sitting there getting all oppressed in our minds about all these assholes who pretend to be running the world.
Kevin, you said you have the 3 Ds, right? Distraction, I can't remember them. Distraction and...
Deny, distract, discredit. Usual methods in a black ops campaign.
But so even the media, the mainstream media, the reporting on an election, it still distracts us from, again, looking at what we're doing internally and taking kind of inspired action. So Iron Crow says the 2030 agenda sounds so nice and caring for the earth. The real agenda behind it's total control, Chinese social credit system, living and the end of your life and liberty, total takeover. Any questions? Okay, we have some more coming in here. Controlled opposition, says Vanjie.
A question about lockdown.
Do you see something there, Kevin?
Please discuss the actions of lockdown and house or business. When or can they take you away? Can we take actions against? I appreciate that question because I really would like us to focus on, with the coming, mandatory vaccinations, what are the powers? How do we counter it? And, The simple answer to that, first of all, it starts here. Just the no. There's nothing more powerful than our own ability to say, I will not cooperate, I will not go along, right? And then it spills out from there. But our sheriffs, and Andrew, you can comment on this, but this is what we're doing. We're having a sheriff meeting tonight in Vancouver. We're talking concretely about how we're going to stop these measures. For example, one thing we're finding out is where are the vaccines being shipped from and to? Where are they being stored? Okay, like the sheriffs in Vancouver are talking openly about going in and trashing these vaccines. We are not going to let these vaccinations be distributed. We're going to stop it physically from happening. So when we start thinking in those terms, we're going to start rallying a lot of people who don't want the words anymore. They don't want all the theories about what's going on. We have to act now. Like a leaflet or even our September 8th law is not going to protect you. Okay, we have to physically start making these plans. So I would urge people to start thinking along those lines. How can you start doing that? And Andrew, if you have any thoughts on that, I know you're facing it in your own life. You've had practical experience of that recently. So
I don't have very much to say. No, I would just boil it down to I know with these vaccines, the loophole is going to be medical exemptions. That's the one thing that's never brought up when they're saying why you will not be insisted upon receiving it or why there will not be a penalty. Medical exemptions always negated from the discussion. So as long as I believe somebody had a competency to self-advocate through that process, they're going to find themselves relatively safe. The part of the population that has the competency with the terminology to actually have success doing that is very small. So secondarily, it's what you're saying. It's finding it at source and making sure that we can lawfully stop this from being distributed. There's very few options when it comes to this, and knowing the score. I know we've been trying to do public awareness on this vaccine issue for 10 years, and I think whoever is going to listen to that message has heard it. So, the team that's fighting against that's already established. So, yeah, we need to do something. Yeah.
I noticed Dena, one of the co-conveners in Vancouver, says, please describe the most important Kanata action required now nationwide. Do you want to say any thoughts you have on that, Dena? Just unmute yourself.
Oh yeah, sorry, here we go. Well, like we were talking in Vancouver, and what's been happening in our greater Vancouver area is also what people are saying in the chat, that the COVID measures are just becoming absolutely ridiculous. People are now getting taken away by security in Costco and in other stores. I mean, restaurants are still okay here, but other places like libraries and, Starbucks, Walmart, it's just, now it's almost like there's absolutely no exemption accepted for not wearing a mask. So, I wanted to take on nullifying COVID measures, which was in the bulletin. So I would just like to ask, what is your view on this? What would be the most important action? Because I think we should all take on this thing nationwide, all of us across Canada.
Well, it's the theme of the show tonight, the necessity of the republic. Everybody needs to take out citizenship right away. Sign a card, get the card. It's your frontline defense. I've used it numerous times with police, and it works every time, because they know we're standing on the law. Even if most people aren't educated about this law, they know that as a sovereign being, you can opt out, but you need something to opt into, right? You can't just say, I as an individual am free. That has no standing. As much, there's a whole industry around saying, here's how you can work through the paperwork and declare yourself free. That's not ultimately recognized. They say, fine, have your fun, but we're not recognizing it. But when you're standing under your nationhood, a different nationhood. That's why Native people traditionally been able to go back and forth across the border without a passport, because they're a separate nation. They're recognized under international law. So are we once we take out that citizenship. So you really all have to do that. And I know I think, Dena, you've done up your own version of the card or whatever, but the basic template we can send out to everybody, and physical copies of the card. Sign it, laminate it, There's a guide that we send out for new citizens. It's kind of a way to go in setting up cell groups and then larger assemblies based on that. But first of all, that has to be something we all carry around. I mean, it's essential. And to unite us in the same kind of presence, right? What Dana was saying, though, do things like we got to ramp it up. For example, one of the things that we did very successfully in one of our campaigns was we get 2 people in a car and you get a megaphone. And megaphones are easy. You go down to Canadian Tire and get one for 20, 30 bucks, right? And you drive around in a card that you don't want recognized. So don't use like a card that you want traced. But anyway, you go into a crowd and you just start talking to them on the bullhorn. And the advantage is you are mobile, so you can take off. You don't have to worry about getting assaulted by somebody. And you start saying, you know, this area is under common law republic jurisdiction. You do not have to obey any of these laws. Send out your message, and you can hit thousands of people in a day that way. And those examples are very powerful because it's talked about. Something like that. You hear what happened down on Main Street, right? Like, rather than just reading another thing on the internet, because our minds are too, whatever the word is, we're too numbed out in this medium. It doesn't. There's a separation that happens between hearing something and your inability to act on it. And I can go into that. We have some knowledge about where that comes from, but our brains have been changed by being on this medium because we don't think that acting on what we learn is necessary. We think that learning something in itself constitutes an action, but it doesn't. And when you approach people off the internet in a different medium and a natural medium where you're just talking to them, it's far more impactful. And that's why we've got to do these public actions. So that's one example of what we can do. Every moment is an opportunity to do that, and then to rally to people and say, join the Republic, disaffiliate now. This is the only defense we have, right?
So there's a few questions about Costco. So I had done a video at Costco back in April. I shared mask information. I posted on their social media page, you know, but it's escalated now that apparently as of November 16th, they're not accepting mask exemptions. So I had posted today to just boycott Costco, you know, to affect their, I mean, what they're concerned about is their profits, and to talk about it and boycott it. But would you suggest, Kevin, actually having our laws, going up to Costco and showing them that we're no longer part of, you know, corporate Canada, those laws don't apply to us, or boycott it and hurt them, you know, really affect where it hurts the most, which is their dollar?
Well, do both, of course. Those are the 2 things you can do. But again, we got to think beyond Costco. We got to think beyond going to local businesses. That we're at a different stage now. And again, we've got to be thinking in terms of not reacting to what they do, but set our game plan. What's our game plan? I'm looking at most of the questions and they're not addressing that. They're not thinking in terms of what is our game plan. A question, Martine says, are we able to take out citizenship for our children? At 16, they can take citizenship themselves. Before that, if you're a citizen, they are still under your care, and so they're included. Just the fact that you're a citizen, you can include them. But then they decide for themselves at 16 personally, right?
Okay, so here's a question. If you're not part of an assembly, can you take out a citizenship in Kanata?
Yes.
You can?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we have citizens all over who aren't in groups. They aren't even in cell groups. They're just all on their own, like living out in Podunk, Saskatchewan, but they're still a citizen, right?
So that's an option for people who may be isolated from a local assembly, even to do right now.
Yeah, and that's another way. If it's all focused on assembly, what do you do with all those individuals out there who can't form an assembly, but they can still be in the Republic? They can still have that card and that involvement, right?
Mm-hmm. Any other questions there? Paul is putting in the Constitution. Is that the draft, Paul, of the Constitution? I wonder. Support local farmers, support local businesses, no masks required, says Iron Crow. I think that's a valid point. You don't need an exemption. You need to exercise your right to liberty. Absolutely, says Paul from Ontario.
Chris, are there specific committees we can join to advance the Republic? What you can, excuse me, what you do, Chris, I know that it's you and a few folks there where you are. I don't want to say where that is, but what you do is you form a cell group. You form 3 people and you constitute a Republic cell group. And you can then decide to do local actions, educations, actions, whatever. I can talk to you about that offline about how to go about that. But I think I sent you a guide for new citizens, that thing we send out, but I'll resend it to you. And that has ideas in there of things. you can work on.
What I think about, I kind of think about the assembly as kind of like the province and Kanata as our country.
Mhm.
So, we're standing, as you say, for something. We're representing something on a national level, which is always bigger, than being represented by an individual or an individual province, let's say. But the other thing I think it provides, it's like a brand. Like if you're trying to make a point, right, you want your brand to be consistent. And I like that, to have, a flag that joins all these different assemblies, to have a constitution that joins us all. I think there's power and strength in that unity. So that was the thought that I had.
Very true.
Dana has the oath PDF. Thank you, Dana, for including that. So Dana's from the Vancouver Assembly. Paul is from Ontario. Who else did I miss? We have somebody from the UK who signed on. So thank you guys for being here. It's really global representation. Any other questions for Kevin? Or Kevin, do you have any other comments on what we've talked about so far? Maybe some more examples of public reclamation. You mentioned about going into a courtroom or being on a megaphone, I guess, in a way is sort of taking up our space.
Very much. Well, it's too bad it's such bad weather right now, but if it was good weather and when it gets good again, once a month we should hold a big public event, like big picnic in the park, have the flag, start promoting the republic in a big way. We plan flag raisings, so we're actually going to go to a prominent flagpole, let's say in your downtown somewhere, and do a flag raising ceremony and claim the area in the name of the republic. And that's tremendous. When people see that, there's something very powerful in the image of a flag, and you're saying this is reclaimed. We're taking back the nation now under a new jurisdiction, and that's a very visible way to do it. Right now, there's about a half dozen flags circulating all over the country, but I'm ordering more. And I know, Dean, I feel bad about it because I was going to include a flag in the box I sent you, but I forgot. But I can send you one. If you guys want to do that, I can send the ones we have left to anyone who's going to take that seriously and use it all the time. Every time you're at a protest, walk around with a flag. I mean, it just literally the term "fly the flag." You've got to stake out our nation, right?
Well, I had T-shirts made up with the Kanata flag on it, and hats, because if you just wear a T-shirt, it automatically sparks, interest and conversation. Wendell had said that he doubts, Dena, I doubt if Costco will care, as they don't, I don't think we have enough folks to make a real impact. You know what, Wendell, I disagree, because I think, if we could send out a message, as I did today on Facebook and their Facebook page, about boycotting them because they're not supporting our human rights, our freedom to oxygen. They have vegetables on the shelf that are genetically modified and called New World vegetables. I think if we could create a campaign around that and really hurt their bottom dollar, which, Kevin, that was something you suggested, right, with the church. It was attacking their weak spot, which is their reputation. And I think we could make a difference. I think that should be part of our campaign.
Yep, and you pick a visible target, and folks in Vancouver Island had the idea. People in Victoria had a bad experience going into Starbucks because they were really brutal. I mean, they just said, "You got a mask, you can't come in here." So they started handing out flyers saying, "Boycott this, go here instead." And that's the first thing corporations respond to if you're going to cut into their profit margins. So we got to always think in those terms. What are the things that they love the most? How do you attack it most directly, right?
I like that flyer idea and the megaphone. Just have to get out of my car next time. So Dylan has talked about Christmas tree sale in Halifax and put his information in there. Food team at Proton Mail. Kanata license plates, says Paul. Question.
Go for it. Just do it. Yeah, all of the above. All of that.
Yeah. Dana loves the idea about the flag too. So, that I think that would be a good idea if we're going to, we talked last night in the convener meeting about, making kind of a unified action across the country. So maybe we have a day, if everybody has flags, maybe we have a day where we go and put up a flag. If we did something like that nationwide and had it, Facebooked or had social media or videotaped it and circulated it, I think that would have an impact.
They're definitely planning it for January 15th, which is the anniversary of the original proclamation. But I think we need, with everything coming down, we need to do it well before then. So I would suggest within the next couple of weeks we do it. But let's talk about that. Think of a good date. Maybe a Saturday. I don't know, where people are more not working or something. I don't know. We'll think about that. But I agree we should do that very soon. A national. We talked as well about issues that can unite us nationally. Obviously, the nullifying the COVID measures, and Dena and Sandy in Vancouver volunteered to help coordinate that nationally. Issue of children, protecting our children, and taxation, keeping money in the community, defunding the system, not paying federal tax money, but putting it in a local republic trust fund that will help a lot of us, because that we need to keep the money back, right? So those are things that can unite us. Those are the issues that seem to be recurring over and over. We did a survey and we found that most people really were into those three issues especially. So think about those.
And would you suppose that maybe by not paying taxes to our corrupt Canadian government, but maybe donating a portion of your earnings to Kanata, is this going to be monitored by our local assembly, or is it going to be monitored by our Kanata representative within the assembly? Like, will there be two kind of accounts, one for the assembly and one for Kanata, or do you see it coming together?
Well, again, we're trying to not make really a distinction between the assembly and the republic, but for now there's a mix. Mm-hmm. But I think this has to be led by those of us who are citizens, who are tied in, who are working for the republic, because ultimately we're saying we are keeping back the money in our communities, but it's got to be administered somehow. And the people who administer it, ideally, okay, again, it's the ideal, the people should be doing it, but the people are at various levels of awareness, commitment. We had another example, in Vancouver, one of the guys who had volunteered to be a sheriff, and he was really gung-ho, and we thought he was the best. Now he's turned around and he's a Catholic, and he's saying, he's having second thoughts. He's getting obviously pressured by people in his church. So people are at various levels. They're going to be in, then they'll be out. We need a solid core that's not going to bail, that's going to keep going regardless. And that's why we need these citizenship commitment, right?
I think the citizenship and the citizenship schools and the leadership is important, because then it gives us consistency, throughout. And I had mentioned to you earlier that I thought if you videotape something, it's hard to get you everywhere. But then in chiropractic, in my chiropractic training, we had like a continuing education where you'd have to watch a video and then answer some questions. So then you're sure that all the citizens have the same kind of understanding, learning, and targeting, the important points. So.
Right, that's really important. Education, that's a whole thing. We need to all be people who take out citizenship. There's a basic citizenship school. We're working on the curriculum for that. And if you have any ideas of what should be taught to new citizens, write to us. Republic National Council at protonmail.com. It's their new email. But Dana just sent something from, how do I answer this, from a young woman. Her worry about the republic is that we're creating another corporation for people to rely on. I don't want to join a new kind of corporate system. Well, that's why we're creating a republic, to get out from the corporate fiction, to establish our own, and based on natural law, right? Now, I know anything can be corrupted, but usually corruption happens is because people let go of something. They start caring about themselves more than all of us. Greed and fear sets in, right? That happens inevitably in any movement. You've got to prepare for that. But at the same time, our model is very different. It's not in the old system at all. So I think this woman needs to be educated a bit about our vision and principles to see. Maybe it'll help. I don't know, Dana, but we can talk about that.
I think the citizenship training is what you're trying to accomplish with that, right? Is teaching people sovereignty, because they're not used to it. They don't know how to stand up for themselves.
Right.
So, by doing it, I think it empowers. So we had a few ideas about bumper stickers from Vanji, and then, seconded by Andrew as a way of getting our message out there. And Freedom Rally in Vancouver, says Brent, December 5th. So Brent, are you connected with Dana? If not, you can put your email in there, and Dana Dena's in Vancouver too.
Just a point about protests and attending right now. We urge people not to, for a simple reason, especially if you're in a leadership position. There's absolutely no reason why we should be putting ourselves on the map right now just to be able to stand with a few hundred other people. Every person in a protest is facially scanned and put in the system. Why do that? There's no need to, especially since protests are dead ends. You know, they're asking for something from a system that will not respond. So there's a far more creative ways we can be hitting them where it hurts. Brent also asked, what literature should we be taking to small businesses? In Vancouver, one of the groups we work with has been doing that. Maybe we can send you some samples of what we say. Basically, we say to small businesses like a coffee place, we did this successfully the other day in Coquitlam. We say to them, if you don't enforce these muzzling, and I don't call them masks anymore, I call them muzzling. If you don't muzzle people, then we will patronize your place. We'll encourage people to come. And Dana, I don't know if you want to mention this, but we were in a coffee place, and by the time after we had been there a little while, people were taking their masks off because we weren't wearing them. You know, so people are very imitative and they mimic each other, and they unconsciously will do that if you establish that presence. And it's about that. It isn't just hand a leaflet. It's about creating a different presence. And then that ripples out. It's energy, right?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on what we did at the Waves Coffee.
Yeah.
So after you left, we spoke with the owners and we went through everything, showed them the National Council, public safety law against COVID measures, the stand down order and everything. And they were actually pretty impressed, but at the same time, pretty frustrated because they said they were being told that the 6 feet 2 meter distancing is sent to them by head office. It's a directive from head office. I then emailed head office and explained to them that, you know, we want to stay their customers. We are not their enemy. We are their friends. We want to support Waves Coffee, even if the government tells everybody to shut down. We want to support their business. And to please get back to me, I would like to discuss this. This was Friday afternoon. I haven't heard back, so I'm going to have to phone him and see if I can maybe talk to him in person.
Anastasia mentioned we need inspiration for direct actions to take, and I think that that's the point. We don't want to do anything which is leaving the initiative in somebody else's hand, like waiting for somebody to get back to us. We have to establish the initiative. What can we do that can visibly change something? And you know,
Michelle just had a thought about the about Costco, and somebody had posted and sent me a message on Facebook about this today. I mean, they're a membership, right? Fee for business. So if we went in there, I went in there and without my mask and had like a live video and demanded to have, you know, my membership returned because they're not allowing me to breathe. That might be an action step. No?
try. Well, it's all good. Try everything. See what works. See what doesn't. Right.
The literature for small business, I think that would be something to circulate if we have some, because there's a lot of businesses right now, and if they have another lockdown, it feels like, you know, that might be their last legs. So if there's anything that we can share with local businesses for inspiration. Any ideas, Kevin? Do you have anything from the?
I can tell you that my mind is very much kind of on the national scene these days. So I often say to people who are assuming leadership, don't think administratively, like who's going to buy the paper clips, right? Mentality, but rather think strategically and politically. What's going to have the most impact, which is going to bring maximum support to us with minimal risk to our people right now? Because, you know, those of us out there right now, we are very vulnerable. And the only thing that's going to change that is, as I learned personally, is when you're being attacked, you attack back. Mm-hmm. That's your only defense. You do not get defensive. You do not hide, because you can't hide anywhere. You're even more offensive than they are. That's your only defense. So that requires strategic thinking all the time. What do we need together to pull ourselves together to have a sense of nationhood? Because that's going to be our strength, and that's kind of the topic of today, right?
Charlene has a question. What's our first step in getting inspiration for direct action? How do we do it?
In a way, Shirley, that's a question to ask yourself. What are the issues? What is your situation? What is the thing you're most pissed off about that you have to take action on? And once you know that, fly it to others and say, do you want to do this? Let's go do it. Let's go try it. One action is worth 10 hours of discussion because we're experiencing it. And we realize, you find out the nature of the enemy by engaging with it. And what I find is the more you engage with the system, the less powerful it actually is, because we have an idea of what we're up against, but that's an idea that's been fed to us from birth. Okay. It's being fed to us right now over the internet, right? We think they're this big power. They're not. They're just a bunch of people who are relying on our fear and ignorance. And when you approach those people one by one, it breaks down. Like, that classic case, I remember one of the times we occupied the Catholic Church in Vancouver, and one of the cops came up to a Native woman and was arguing with her and told her to get out of the church, and she wouldn't. And finally the cop said, "Don't you know who I am?" And the woman looked right at him and said, "You're just a guy in a suit." Right? And it was brilliant because you could literally see him, boom, his whole aura of authority collapsed. She had counted coup on him. And that's what we did. Not only the churches, but the whole country. We just said, boom, your authority is illusion. You're the little man behind the mask. And that happens every time you do an action. So that's how we get confidence, say, no, we are the nation. We have the power, but we're that sleeping giant. We don't realize that till we start engaging. So maybe that was a long way to answer your question, but I don't want to give you an answer because the answer lies in you and what you have to do right now. And what we need is the framework to unite it all with the message that we're a new nation. We're not under your authority. We're under our own.
And Daniel has thoughts. He says, stop focusing on Costco and focus on supporting local food and contracts and supporting them to stay open. So Daniel's focus is there, where someone else's focus may be on Costco if that's where their most pain is. We could all fly Kanata flags at our residence, says Galaxy. I think that's a great idea. So maybe when you're ordering the flags, Kevin, you don't just send one. Maybe we could pre-order and take orders and I think that's a great idea.
I'll give you, what I'm going to do right now, Dean? I'm going to type right here.
Okay.
It's called the Flag Store in Thornton, Ontario. And that's where we ordered the flag from. You can, okay, I'm going to write it here.
Or you can send it to me in an email too. And maybe what we can do is take orders in the assembly. Because if we had local people that want to fly flags, I had a few questions from members asking about flags. So that would be good. Are we going to go shopping?
What do you think? I'm going to send it to you, Dena, but maybe I should just post it right here.
Sure, yeah, because someone who's everybody to see.
So the Republic flag, and here's their number as well. 1.
And the t-shirts that I had, I just took an image from the internet of the Kanata flag for, I don't know, $6 or $7. They upgraded it to a high resolution at Vistaprint, and then they printed the t-shirts and sent them within a week. So if anyone's interested in doing their own t-shirts, that's kind of an easy way to do it.
Yeah, you can get your own smaller flags done. Just local initiative, just do the flag. You might get them done more cheaply. The ones from the flag store in Ontario were $140 each. So I'm sure we could get them cheaper than that.
So Dena is organizing an initiative there in Vancouver, talking about going shopping. And Anastasia says, part of me thinks that instead of fighting these big box stores, let's establish a freedom market of local producers and craftspeople. What a great idea. And I think Daniel was talking about that. Maybe we could do it in their parking lot. Hand out flyers.
That's what I mean. That's the way we're going to think. Right. We establish it. We don't go to them. We establish it.
Yeah, we hand out flyers to people going into their establishment about the sales we're having in ours. I love that idea. Let's try that. Sammy will buy a flag. Iron Crow. COVID is what is most concerning for him. So again, the COVID measures. Okay, I just have to skip over some comments. I'll put a flag on my house, says Paul in Ontario. Post it and compare the costs. So again, that's all in there. Flag, yeah. So the flag idea, everyone's interested in. So I think that might be a good one.
All right, well, you know what I'll do? I'll put one in the mail to you, Dena. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries.
I know you'll use it well.
Well, I don't have a home at the moment, so I can wrap myself in it.
I was going to say wrap yourself and just walk around in it. It's that woman in that flag.
Okay, so any other questions or comments? You know, I've seen a video about a business in the UK standing under common law where the police came into the business and she said, "I'm no longer under your authority. I stand under common law." The police officer turned around and walked out of the business. It was beautiful. I thought,
Yeah.
wow, there's power, right, in just claiming your own authority outside that corrupt structure.
I find that usually works unless they want to make an example of you, and then it won't work, and they'll come down on you. But 9 times out of 10, it does work because they know you're telling the truth, and you have power there, right?
Mm-hmm. Any other questions from the chat box here? What do we think of the Great Reset, says Chris?
I don't know what to think of it. Again, it's an idea. Like when it happens, I'll believe in it. But I don't want to rest our hopes on that because people have been saying it's going to happen for years, and it may or may not. I don't know. But of course, I'm ignorant about a lot of economic things. That's not my forte. So maybe you'd know better.
I think it's already happening. I think we're in it. You know, we're tearing down that old structure and creating a whole new identity. So I think we are. We just pushed the button and now it's resetting. I think it's going to flip.
Right. How are we going to reset? That's the question. Not as how something is going to come down on high for us, but how are we going to create that reset? How are we going to reset our local economy?
We'll do designs on the Mighty Network. So we have a Mighty Network that is kind of like our social media for our assembly, where we host all sorts of votes and things and information. Bumper stickers would be great, says Krista. So that could be something that we could put into Vistaprint too. Kevin, do you have any other comments about the charter, the draft of the Constitution?
I just really urge people to read it and go over it. And as you're reading it, circle things and say, no, I want this. I think this should be amended. When you want to make amendments, gather all the amendments together and send them to Republic National Council. I've got to make sure I don't blow that email address. Let me just check because somebody else set it up. Yeah, it's Republic National Council at protonmail.com and put attention Constitution Committee. Anything you send to them in the way of amendment will be included in their package. They're doing a whole package of proposed amendments, which will be on the agenda of the April Constitutional Convention. That's April 15th to 18th. It's going to be Zoom linked, but we also have to find a physical place to hold it. So maybe folks in, well, I don't know, wherever you are, maybe you have ideas of why it should be held in your area. Maybe you have got the facilities or the people to be there, why it should happen. But they're still deciding where to hold it, literally, physically. So the original idea was Winnipeg, but that was kind of for sentimental reasons for people who set it up. I think realistically, it should be near where we have the most presence. And
where people are willing to pay for your travels.
Well, that always helps. You know, I once tried riding in a rail car and it didn't really work. The CPR cops are not very nice, but this is winter, so I don't think that will work.
But I really feel like that's part of valuing yourself. And, you know, you've given so freely of your time just to our assembly, hundreds and hundreds of hours with different members, with Zooms and interviews, and always been available in times of crises, you know, for free. And then I get this email from another common law group that I'm a part of. And, you know, they're asking me to donate when I don't see anything that they've done for me or my family or my community. So just paying for your travels to come here, I think is a way of valuing yourself. And hopefully, you know, those around will kind of value you and your time too. So,
well, thank you. But the bulletin makes that point that it's not even an option anymore. My travel has to be covered if I'm going to go to an area. Now that's their policy. They're firmer than I am. And they said, no, this is crazy. It's got to be part of what people do. They've got to pay your way there, right?
Well, you're unemployed too, so.
My coat's to sleep on too, right? Well, not just unemployed, but blacklisted, you know. Doesn't help. There was a comment here. Dana mentioned Rebel News.
Yeah.
My only contact with them is they interviewed me twice, and each time they never published it. So I'm not saying bad Rebel News. I'm just saying I'm sure they are influenced by the smear campaign and that. And we do have a media. We have the radio show on Sundays. It's syndicated all over the planet. really get people to think in terms of how it's also a podcast. So use our Here We Stand radio show. Hopefully Carla and others in Alberta are going to be on the air this Sunday, but think in terms of how we can build on what we have, right?
Do you want to mention that issue with Carla or?
Carla in Alberta, she's the convener for all of Alberta, and she was approached by a woman named Lori, whose 27-year-old son, while in hospital, had his organs trafficked while he was still legally alive. And we've discovered that this is a regular practice. We know that happened with Native people, and it's part of the organ trafficking system, in the West especially, because there's a big Chinese influence behind that. And they need organs while they're fresh. So they literally will pressure parents to sign away, permission while they're still technically alive, in some cases even breathing. So it's murder. And the hospital has a whole protocol allowing it to happen. It's all legal under the rules. I mean, what better case to use to show that we live in a criminal system, right, where the laws serve the criminals, right? So anyway, that's hopefully will be the air this Sunday. I'm still waiting to hear back from Carla about that, but that's our plan.
And we have Galaxy saying, he'd be happy to contribute to your travels. Sandy thanking you for your mentorship and really appreciates you. Andrew says maybe they can call Rebel News. Dylan says, I'll create resource section on our Mighty Network. Please send me practical, commonly used documents to be uploaded. Thank you, Dylan, for organizing that. Andrew sent a few videos there. What about Coast and Ecology Action Center? Who's funding them, says Vanjie.
I don't know who they are.
Okay.
First Nations response to us raising the Kanata flag. They're the ones who originally suggested it at the Winnipeg Convention when we adopted the flag. We had the original. You might have seen if you do an internet search. Originally, there was a tree with an eagle on top of it as a symbol of Kanata, and then the Native contingent insisted we adopt the present one with the Tura Wampum on it. And first thing they did is we went out and raised it on the reservation, Long Plains Reservation, west of Winnipeg, near Brandon, and caught hell for doing that from the chief and council. But the point is that they are very much into the flag that we have because it takes them seriously. It takes the original Tura Wampum Treaty, pre-colonial, pre-genocide kind of situation, and bringing it up to the present. So, it's partly them that are responsible for that.
So maybe you can explain that to me. So Indigenous are going to be together with us, Nation or Nation, or are they're under the Kanata umbrella?
Well, the proposal right now, as you'll see if you read the Constitution and the case for Kanata, the book we have, is that no Native sovereign nation will be compelled to join the Republic. They can go their own way. It has to be voluntary. If they do join, they're part of a federation, so of equal nations. So within a Congress, there'd be a separate chamber of Indigenous deputies. And that chamber would have veto power if we made decisions about affecting their nation or an area where there's a majority Native population. So they would have kind of like home rule over matters of education, health and welfare, and that within their own community. Again, that's the ideal, because don't forget, in the Native world, it's even more corrupt than the white world. You've got a legacy of a few chiefs who run everything, who identify with the Indian Act and the government, are going to fight this tooth and nail and won't be on our side. So we have to encourage a traditional leadership and the young people and the people who we want to bring forward and who are our natural allies. So if some chief comes forward and starts condemning the Republic, well, no shit, because that's the federal government speaking. He's their puppet. Mm-hmm. So we got to be very aware. We got to be aware of Native politics and what goes on in the different areas. So that's kind of a short answer. But that's the vision, is that it would be equal nation within a federation. Yep.
We had an outreach on Monday out at the Windsor, the Avon River, where the three grandmothers have been sitting there for 170 days in peaceful demonstration against the, blocking of the fish flow and, stopping the spawning of the salmon. So it reached a critical point where they had a ministerial order to open the dam, and the fisheries minister, Bernadette Jordan, was sitting on her desk for 3 weeks. So the grandmothers organized this peaceful demonstration where they blocked the highway for a couple of hours, only every 6 minutes letting people through, and just stood across the road. It was the most magnificent thing. But she had the power, because the RCMP were there, the Department of Fisheries. I mean, she was holding the power, and had all these people around sort of supporting her. It was totally amazing. So even though that system is corrupt, they still hold a certain power within that group. So I could just imagine, if I was Indigenous, that I would want to maintain maybe power in both camps, Kanata and Canada.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, you see what happened is right there, one of the reasons the Mounties didn't intervene is she was standing on her sovereign nationhood like we do when we hold up the card. Mm-hmm. And they can't interfere with that. They know that. They can interfere if you're operating in their system, right? If you acknowledge their authority and jurisdiction.
So any more questions? Did I miss anything? Organ harvesting in the hospitals goes deeper than anyone knows, says Lax. That's why you have to opt out of organ donations.
We can just go ahead and order our own flags. Yes, if you want to pay $140, which was the last price they quoted to us, or find a local flag shop, take the design in and say, what are you going to cost for producing this? Risk of facial ID by being Israeli. It's a major risk. Back in 1984, I helped set up a coalition against the formation of CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service. We were holding rallies in Vancouver. And one of the Mounties came over to me. We had coffee after, and he said, RCMP Security Service have had a policy since the 1930s. If you go to a protest, even if you're some pizza guy delivering pizza and you walk through the crowd, boom, you get a file opened on you. Anyone who's at a protest gets a file open on. That's been standard practice. So you go to a protest and you are on their radar, right? Which is not a smart thing. I mean, of course we're on their radar anyway. Like, screw them. I'm not worried about that. But why help them, right?
They must have a big file on me by now. The Coast, Vanjie says, is supposedly an independent newspaper here in Halifax. Supposedly defending our environment, but we know nothing about 5G. I think we need to knock on their doors. Great idea, Vanjie. And Vanjie had delivered information to 50 kind of mom and pop businesses. She took it upon herself to do that. And thank you for that, true sovereign.
There's a question about, do we give up Canadian citizenship to join the Republic? Mm-hmm. Well, you don't have citizenship in Canada. You're not a citizen. You're a ward of the state, really. You're a subject of the Crown. That's why you have no rights now, because the Charter of Rights was revoked and you have to do what you're told. A citizen has the right to opt out. Canadians don't under their system. So you're establishing citizenship by joining the Republic. You don't have to give up any benefits. Any of the straw man benefits you get through the capital letter, that's the fiction over there. We've got our natural person over here joining the Republic.
Maybe we mentioned this, I think, last week, but just some of the tips that if you're approached by an officer or, some sort of legal enforcement agency, let's say, that you suggested always to stand first under common law. Mm-hmm. And then not to repeat if they ask if you understand. Don't do that, because it means you're standing under the maritime law, and not to give your name, to make that differentiation that this is your name under the, corporate Canada, which is corrupt. It's a fictitious name, and not to give it. Any other tips for people, Kevin, in how to, if they're approached by law enforcement, police?
I immediately talk to the person as a human being, ask them why they're there, what their authority is, why they're concerned. Are there any charges you're laid? Have you heard about common law? Do you know the difference between statute and law? Do you know about the Republic? Why don't you join? Come to our meeting. I mean, turn it back on them and start to bring them on board. They're not an enemy, right? They just don't know any better. That's the way I look at it.
Awesome. Can I jump in as sheriff and just offer something here to the locals?
Sure.
It's all great maybe to offer that type of dialogue as Kevin is implying, but I would advise you to never answer any question from any police officer ever. Don't answer their questions.
Oh, I agree. No, you're right, Andrew.
You can gain nothing by doing it. You can inform them of your own narrative as long as you find it convenient for yourself, but do not answer their questions. Something you don't even perceive as implicating you in any way, shape, or form can. So just trust that you don't want to answer any question of a police officer ever.
You're right.
Can I interject there? I have a video on exactly that, Andrew. I found a couple of years ago, and it's awesome. It's in the States, and the guy got pulled over a number of times, and he just says to the cop when he comes to the window, "I don't answer questions." And it's quite interesting to see it because it works. You don't answer questions, you don't talk to them, because they're going to lie because they have a legal right that they can lie to you, and we can't lie to them. There's something wrong with this picture, but so you don't answer any questions. You get a ticket, give me the ticket, see you, bye.
Great. Thank you.
Right.
You know that Star Trek movie where they're being attacked by these Borgs, these robots, and they can shoot the Borg, and the first few times it works, but then the Borg adapts
Exactly.
and it doesn't hurt them anymore. That's what we're in. They adapt very quickly to what we do. So we know for a fact police are told if they don't answer questions, you can haul them in for obstructing justice, right? So that's why I say you're right. Formally, we've got to not engage with them. But as a human being, man to man, woman to woman, whatever, we can get them on side. So we shouldn't just act like, screw you, I'm not, because that feeds into their system. That's kind of innate resistance. And we're not about resistance, we're about absorption. We absorb their energy. Boom. That's our power, right?
I totally agree. Do not be belligerent with the police. Be their peace officers, as I would say each of us is. We're peace officers in a sense too. So everyone just stick to that mentality that we're just operate in peace.
Remember, Andrew, that they're trained to ask the questions in certain ways, and there's a lot of people that would break under their the way they assert themselves, and people are nervous with them anyways when they get pulled over, right? So, and they know that. So yes and no, agree and don't agree. So
Galaxy, thank you guys. Galaxy, we only have a few minutes left, but a few questions. Galaxy says, can we use any name on our citizenship card?
Yep. Any name along as you identify with it, and you know that that's you. Somebody said there has to be a law broken to be an obstruction of justice. Well, in theory, but in practice, they use that all the time because they're not operating under the rule of law. They can move the goalposts, they can make up anything they want. Because we've had people hauled in for obstructing justice just by not answering them.
Okay, so Silver Bar says, you be the one to ask the questions. Paul says, no, they can't arrest you lawfully. Anastasia would love a copy of the complete elevator speech. We should give a cop. If they ask for our driver's, I guess, license, do we decline?
You don't need, well, you could, I mean, there are different responses, as everyone knows. There's Magna Carta response saying there's nothing in Magna Carta requiring that I have a license or insurance to move on the public thoroughfares. People have won in American courts using that argument.
Paul says, if they falsely arrest you, it would be an assault and kidnapping. Yes to the elevator speech. Someone else likes that idea. Paul says he declines all the time. Can they arrest you for not complying, says Angie?
They can arrest you for whatever reason they want, but I mean,
They will come up with something anyways, like you said, Kevin. They'll come up with something. And the first time that I realized how bad it was, when I started watching I watch videos, I get in that mode of watching the videos where police are arresting people in the States, and you'll always hear, stop resisting, and the person is not resisting. So it's a good point. They will find something. Either way, if they want to take you in, they will. It's as simple as that. So it's kind of like, that's why I'm on the border, like, what to do, right?
Well, don't like, again, it's not about operating from fear, but about love. You look at them in love and friendship, literally, right? It works. 9 times out of 10, it works.
So I don't know if there's any more questions that I'm missing over. Paul says, read 495 criminal code, arresting powers, says they can't arrest you. I watched a UK video where the police had arrested this guy and then they de-arrested him, and then he's going to, through common law, charge them, with that. Hello, Michelle, it's made it home safely.
Oh, one thing about the Mounties, they're redundant in many places, and they know it. They just duplicate police, local police. And so the Mounties literally have a quota of numbers of people they have to arrest every day to make it look like they're doing something, so the Solicitor General renews them every year, right? Because, and so the Mounties are under a lot of pressure to just bust heads. And, you know, they admit that all the time, right? You know, so that's their situation. We can exploit with that, right?
Here's a good question from Chris. Can you open up a bank account under a new name as a citizen of the Republic? So
I
if
don't
you
know,
have,
why not? It depends. Try it.
if you have a citizenship card though, right, that and you've identified yourself with a different name,
in theory, sure. I mean, you try it out.
They'll ask you for a government ID. They usually do. So they can try it, but
No, we do have government ID. This is the government of the Republic
so
of
that,
Canada.
yeah.
After
Well,
April,
they-
there'll be a government. Yeah.
Yeah. You try.
Kevin, do you follow the work of Christopher James, says Peter?
Yeah, I've read a little bit about it. Yeah.
Traffic courts in Ontario have been closed for over 9 months now, says Paul. So they're not going to be able to do anything with your ticket, I guess. We hear.
Well, that's true. It's backlogged, right?
So Ferdinand, you don't have to worry about that. We need a Bank of Kanata. That's a great idea.
There's an economic commission set up that's going to be, and people again write to that email. Any ideas about taxation, banking, finances, economy? They're gathering in ideas from all over. So if you want to be part of that, Republic National Council at Proton Mail.
1974, Trudeau sold the Bank of Canada, says Brent.
Yeah.
True. Bitcoin Bank of Kanata, says Peter. We have some members looking at Bitcoin for us. Lex is one of them. So any other, we're at the hour mark.
Okay.
Any other closing comments? Kevin, you want to give your Proton Mail and your website and the Republic website again?
Angel Fire 101 at protonmail.com is mine.
I think Chris is asking the email for the Republic too, where he can talk about his ideas about the bank and the Economic Commission.
Republic National Council at Proton Mail. And of course, the site republicofcanada.ca. And this Sunday, of course, every Sunday at 7 p.m. Atlantic is our radio show, Here We Stand.
And your books are available at
.com, yep.
murderbydecree.com. Okay, I just have one question. I should have asked it earlier. It just came to me now. What about if our leadership, if we have people in our different assemblies who aren't willing or wanting to have part in Kanata or take out a Kanata citizenship?
Well, to hell with them. That's what I say. No, okay, that was a joke. Don't quote me. It was just a joke, people. No, no. My attitude is just it's totally voluntary. If people are at the point where they want to take out citizenship, nobody's forcing them. The reality is, within the assembly, hopefully the leadership will be within citizenship. And that creates an imbalance because it means the leadership or people within the assembly who are citizens can be delegates, they can vote on the Constitution, but the other people can't. So just from the point of view of, let's test this out, take out citizenship, see if you like it, at least it gives you equal rights to everybody else. You can then influence things. You don't want to just carp and make criticism. You want to get in and influence it. If you don't like what's there, get in and put in an amendment. So just from the point of view of democracy and making things equal, I would say everyone should take out citizenship. See what it's like, right?
How do we get the cards? That would be through Kirsten, Sammy, and I can send that information to you. Mark bought gold. The dealer didn't ask me for any ID. They have no clue who I am.
That's in the East Coast. Anybody else? Easiest is just write to I'm sorry, I broke up there. If you're in the East Coast, yeah, Dena and Kirsten have cards, but Republic National Council at Proton, I'll write to them and fill out, you go to the Oath of Citizenship at republicofcanada.ca. There's a PDF, fill it out, send it in, the card's sent to you.
I think Dena from Vancouver had actually published that earlier. So that would be great. I'm just scrolling through. Can you see any other last minute questions? Have tons of food and seeds, says Brent. Anastasia. So there's, oh, thank you. Dana just posted the Republic of Kanata, the Oath of Citizenship. And there's the website
Thanks, Dana.
too. So that'll be your national kind of connection. Great. So thank you everyone for being here. It's
Thanks, everyone.
truly a joy to have that, commitment from all over. If you want to pop in and say goodbye, you can unmute yourself and I'll be shutting off the recording soon. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Kevin and Dena. Thanks, everybody. Love
Thanks,
you all.
everybody.
Thank you.
You guys
Carry
too.
it on.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, all.
Good
Bye.
night, everyone.
Hasta la vista.
Bye. Good night,
you, Kevin.
everyone.
Hasta la vista, baby.